Greetings, fellow humans, and welcome to the Renaissance Yorkshireman interview. Today, I'm speaking with Perry Gruber, who is the creator and one of the primary movers behind the Copiosis organization. And I believe that Copiosis could be a radical and workable alternative to the financial systems that we have at the moment. And in previous videos, I've spoken about the five capitals framework and how in capitalism, the financial capital is valued above all else. But in a post-capitalist or game B system, it would be valued below the other forms of capital. And as I said, I believe that Copiosis is a workable alternative to the financial systems we have at the moment. So, Perry, could you give us a brief background and an overview to Copiosis, please?
Sure. So Copiosis is an implementation solution that transitions our current global society into essentially a moneyless society through a planetary level disruptive economic system that we've put together. And in that system, all people are free of debt. They no longer have to earn a living. They essentially are encouraged to pursue their passions. And while they're doing those things, other people are providing those people and everyone else all their necessities at no cost to those people. So the necessities are food, clothing, shelter, education, and healthcare. Now, there's some things in those categories that are not included in the necessity definition, but those things are provided but most of the things that are provided in those categories are provided to everyone at no cost. And the people who are providing those things are awarded a non-monetary recognition of their output we call net benefit awards or net benefit rewards. This is not money. And so when a person does something for another or the planet in a way that produces what we call net benefit, then the person who has taken that action gets this award. And so long as the beneficial results of that person's actions persist in the world, they keep receiving that reward. So the system creates what's it called, passive income or residual income based on your actions. But unlike capitalism, almost anything you do in Copiosis creates net benefit. And so in time, everyone has an enormous number of streams of income coming in of this net benefit awards or rewards as a result of their actions in the world. Now, some people ask, well, what do you do with this net benefit awards thing? Well, we replace money, so there's no money in the world, and your necessities are provided at no cost to you. But in order to inspire those people who are extrinsically motivated to do things in the world, we have another class or category of products and services called luxury items. And so luxury items can only be obtained when you have enough net benefit rewards to unlock what's called the gateway on that luxury item. Now, some people compare Copiosis to like communism and socialism because it appears to be centrally planned and there appears to be a government, but it's not. So all property and all the factors of production are owned by individuals, and the decision as to whether or not a product or a service is going to be a luxury or a necessity is decided by the person who is producing those things. So no one tells the producer what they do with anything, actually. They get to decide whether their output is going to be classified as a necessity or luxury. If it's classified as a luxury, obviously people have to receive MBR in order to consume the luxury. If it's a necessity, everyone gets it at no cost. Another category of products and services in our system are called capital goods, which are the same thing as capital goods today, except in Copiosis, those things are provided to all producers at no cost also. And so producers can operate their organizations at no cost, which allows them to produce their products for no cost. And thereby, we greatly accelerate the innovation process of entrepreneurialism because there's no costs holding people back, and there are no restrictions with regard to access to resources holding people back. So Copiosis provides a world where everyone gets to pursue their passions. If you don't know what your passions are, you're free to identify them because all your necessities are provided at no cost. You don't have to spend all your time working in order to pay your bills or to buy your food or whatnot. You can spend all your time identifying your passions. And once you implement your passions into a vocation, you naturally become successful because all passions generally cause people to be successful. And then as a result of that, you have all kinds of income streams coming in, not just from, continue what I was saying. So you get once everyone's pursuing their passions, not only are they being rewarded for the net benefit generated from their passions, but they're also awarded net benefit rewards from things they do just as being a human being, like helping their friends or their family or their neighborhood or something like that. So Copiosis is generally designed to free people from earning a living, free people from the capitalist system, but also to eliminate communism, and socialism as well.
Right. So in a sense, you're almost kind of like cherry picking some of the best parts of capitalism and cherry picking some of the better parts of socialism and bringing in other ideas as well. Would that be a reasonable way of putting it?
That's exactly what happened. So in the early days, what we did was we reverse engineered the current system and then created novel innovations that fit along with that reverse engineering and ended up with the system that we have. Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay, great. When I watched some of your videos before about Copiosis and read a bit on your website, how much people would be rewarded, like per hour of work or per unit of whatever they're creating, like if they're a carpenter, per chair or table or whatever, would partly be determined by an algorithm. Now, how would this algorithm be programmed? And how would it work in practice?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not partly rewarded. Your rewards are 100% dependent on the algorithm. And
Right.
unlike algorithms today, this algorithm is 100% transparent and open source. So even today, as we're moving through version 7, anyone can see how the algorithm works and anyone can look at the underlying principles of the algorithm. So, and unlike, some people think that this algorithm is trying to create value or measure value. And what it's actually doing is it's recognizing the effect of results that come from a given action, whatever that action is.
Right.
And the measurement is based on 8 questions. So the first question is, given any act and the results it produces, what are the resources that were consumed to produce that act? And are those resources, are they sustainable or not? And are they abundant or not? That's the first question. The second question is, how many other people are doing acts that produce those kind of results? The third question is, how many people want the results that are produced from that act? The fourth question is, what are the scientific or the objective benefits that result to the planet and to people when the results of that act show up? The next question is, what are the subjective benefits that result from people interacting with the results that show up from the act? So, and that one's measured by consumers giving feedback to the algorithm. So it's real-time information.
Right.
The next question is, what is the geographic region over which that act and its results impact? Is it a local community? Is it a state? Is it a region? Is it a nation? Or is it the whole globe? The next question is, what is the environmental impact of the results that are produced from that act? So does it harm the environment or does it benefit the environment? And then the final question that's asked is, how does the results of the act contribute to human resiliency? So does it make human beings more resilient or does it make them less resilient? And so these are the questions that are embedded in the algorithm. Now, the algorithm sits in a piece of software that incorporates the values of everybody on the planet who's willing to participate in sharing their values. And those values are the weight of people's values are heavier compared to other values, depending on how close those people are to the person taking the act. So let's say, for example, you and me are in a community, and
Right.
you value X, and then Chang in China values value Y. And so when the algorithm is calculated on my act, the values that you hold have more weight on my action than Chang's does in China, because you're closer to me relative to our impacts to each other.
Right.
So human values are taking into account, they're weighted according to where the person is and what is the community the person is acting in. And then those values are used to determine what the algorithm variable values are going to be, the numerical values are going to be, so that when the calculation is calculated, out comes a number. And that number reflects all the answer to all the 8 questions I laid out before,
Yeah.
weighted by the values according to where that act took place. So the community in which the act took place has the values have the highest weight, and then out the next geography of values has next heaviest weight, until it goes all the way out until you get to the planet, where the human planetary values have the least amount of weight, but they are incorporated in the algorithm. So that's how it works.
Okay, so in a sense, it sounds to me like that last part that you just explained, there's both a local aspect and a global aspect to it.
Yeah, it's seamless. So it's local, global, and everything in between.
Right. And it also seemed to me, and something that I mentioned, the critique of capitalism, is that it doesn't do a true cost accounting of all positive and negative externalities. Now, it sounds to me like point 4 and 5 you mentioned there about what was it, objective impacts on the environment, on the environment and society, and subjective. Right. That sounds to me like you're using the tools of capitalism in this case for positive and negative externalities. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, the objective value is looking at the externalities, like how is it specifically impacting people in the planet beyond the consumer's experience. So like today, you could, if you're addicted to meth, you can go and consume meth, and the person who's selling you the meth makes money. And
Right.
It doesn't matter that everyone else who's using meth in your community is ruining your community. And it also doesn't matter if it's ruining you. So
Right.
so so, and if you had to give a subjective rating as an addict to meth, if you had to give a subjective rating on the meth, you wouldn't be considering the fact that it's ruining your community. You'd just be considering your own personal experience. So
Right.
in copiosis, the product that we call meth, is an outcome of a bunch of actions, and the consumption of meth produces results. And so we're
Right.
looking at the results, and the results we're looking at with the algorithm are the objective results. So actually all the questions are looking at that, right? It's not just the objective results to the consumer, it's all the objective results. And so we are looking at the external impacts of those results, but then we're also wanting the subjective feedback of the user too. It's just that the subjective feedback of the user is not going to weight as strongly as the overall impacts, because the external impacts are spread out across most of the questions, right? So there's resource use, that's an external impact. It's
Right.
objective scientific impacts or results. It's region. It's resiliency. It's environmental impact. So at least 5 of the 8 questions have something to do with measuring the externalities.
Right. Great. No, that all seems fairly straightforward, really, and transparent. So, are there any pitfalls that you see in the system at the moment? Any weaknesses that you're still working on?
So the current state of technology is catching up with our idea. So before, we did not have the technology to be able to wrap the algorithm in a software that allowed us to seamlessly incorporate and weigh or balance subjective values across the planet. But now with the decentralization and the digitization of technology, we're finding more and more opportunities to do so. And with the security of technology like blockchain and beyond blockchain technologies like Hollow. I don't know if you're familiar with Hollow chain, but it's a totally...
I've heard of it, but I don't really know about it in any detail.
Yeah, it's totally different than blockchain. It's kind of like beyond blockchain. And then there's Cardano, which is basically blockchain too. And so we've got lots of technologies that are emerging that are coming in perfect timing to fit with us. So one of the pitfalls has been technology barriers, but that's now becoming no longer an issue. And this is the philosophy we have, is that all of the what people consider to be pitfalls, we consider to be opportunities to expand into the greater solution. And that's what we're seeing. So that's one of the pitfalls. The other pitfalls we've been thinking about is the nature of the infinite abundance of award. So in Copiosis, net benefit rewards are infinite. There's no limit to how many can be rewarded. And our concern early on was that once we transition to Copiosis, everybody could potentially become a multi-billionaire overnight, because the amount of benefit that a person creates as they move through the world is tremendous. Capitalism barely scratches the surface on the benefit that a human being generates. And so what we realized was we would have to phase in the maximum impact of the algorithm over time to give human beings a chance to kind of decompress and adjust to a system of abundance where they're being truly rewarded for everything they produce. And that might cause some friction because, people have been trained into this, I have to have it now perspective. And so that might be a pitfall. And then another pitfall we've thought about that, but going back to that abundance thing. So relative to infinite MBR, we're solving that by the transition process that we're using. So our transition process is a 7-step process. And in the 6th and 7th step is we draw out essentially we gradually increase the reward capability of Copiosis until it reaches the maximum. And that happens over a period of years so that the system so that reality can catch up with the system. So that's how we solve that pitfall. And then another pitfall we've thought about, which we're working on, is what I call the pre-transition land grab. So there are concerns that once Copiosis becomes really well known, some people will just start buying up as much land as they can under the flawed assumption that land is going to be the foundational factor to create wealth. But that's not accurate. That's a misunderstanding of how Copiosis works. But even if certain people buy up all the land, it's not that big of a problem, we realize, because even if you, for example, owned all the land on the planet, you couldn't handle managing all that land. And so it's not possible for you to have some sort of monopoly on the net benefit value that's created from that land, because you can't do it all. So other people you would have to employ other people. You would have to work with other people to manage that land, and the people that you employ to manage the land on your behalf would be receiving the MBR. So we solved that pitfall too. So the thing is about this word pitfall, it's not really a pitfall for us. It's just like new questions come up and we're like, okay, well, how is this going to be solved? And then we figure out that we've solved it. I mean, so another good example is there were some concerns not long ago about inflation in Copiosis until we really looked into how inflation works. And the reason why inflation shows up, it's not because of an influx of cash coming into the system. It's because producers, if there's an influx of cash into the system, producers want more of that cash. And so they inflate the prices to get more of that cash. Well, in Copiosis, you can't do that and get more MBR. The only way you get MBR is by producing more value. And so inflation doesn't happen in Copiosis, we realized after examining that problem. So those are some of the pitfalls that we've identified and have solved.
Right, great. One of the contrasts that I think is quite important with Copiosis compared to the system we have now is in Copiosis, there's no debt as compared to most currencies that exist on planet Earth now, which are debt-based currency. So that's correct, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And the the process of transferring everybody, businesses, states out of debt is unique to Copiosis.
Right. Great. So you touched on, you said there would be like a kind of transition period from where we are now to how we would ultimately get to Copiosis once it's fully up and running. And you also mentioned about getting people ready. Now, I'm kind of assuming that on a certain level, that's a psychological issue, transitioning from like what is sometimes called a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Is that reasonable?
It's 100% reasonable and 100% accurate. So this is one of the reasons why we're turning up the dial to the maximum function of Copiosis instead of just going all the way to the maximum to start, because people aren't ready to handle living in an abundant world. And thankfully, you talked about, before we started the show here, you talked about yourself wanting to become kind of like a coach or a mentor to people in the realm of meditation. There are lots and lots of people out there who are making that choice. And so there are lots and lots of people who are going to be supporting what we're doing by helping people begin making that transition, that mental and psychological transition. But the interesting thing about Copiosis too is when people start thinking about Copiosis, or even working with us on the team, or participating in a demonstration project, just through their participation, their mind starts to shift as they start to realize that maybe we do live in an abundant world, and maybe people are nice, and maybe people are generous, and maybe people really are wanting to do the right thing instead of all the negative things that we've been trained to think about people and our world. So yeah, it's a natural byproduct. This psychological shift is a natural byproduct of the innovation that we're doing.
Right. Well, something that's just occurred to me just now from what you've just said is related to some of the videos I made the last week of January and the week before that, talking about game theory and Machiavellian strategies. Now, it's my belief that one of the problems with capitalism is that it favors Machiavellian strategies, which tend to be preferred by individuals with psychopathic and or narcissistic characteristics. Now, it seems to me from what you're saying that this is kind of shifting the balance in the opposite direction, that it's going to tend to prefer reciprocal strategies and expansive strategies over Machiavellian strategies. So moving away from a kind of zero-sum game kind of thinking where I'm only going to benefit if I'm taking from someone else, to a non-zero-sum game win-win situation, which is I benefit, the person I'm dealing with benefits, and the planet benefits. So would that be a fair assessment?
It is exactly that assessment, and it's interesting because it's not just capitalism, by the way, that favors Machiavellian behavior. If you look at communism, the same thing is happening there in China or in Russia. If you look at socialism, the same thing's happening there. As the bottom line of all these systems is that money exists, and when you have money separating people, turning people into a means to an end, the means through which you gain your wealth, which is money in these systems, then you have the favoritism towards Machiavellian principles, because you don't care about the people, you care about what's in their pocketbooks. Right. And so yeah, in Copiosis, because you're not after what's in people's pocketbooks, because you can't get their MBR, when you get rewarded MBR in Copiosis, that is created brand new. It's not someone else's MBR. So the only way you can get MBR is by benefiting people or the planet or both. And so if you're acting in a psychopathic manner, you are harming people. And more than, to be honest, in my opinion, a psychopath trying to do what they do in capitalism in Copiosis would not even get off of square one, because no one wants to work with someone who's like that. And right. Because people don't have to earn a living and they don't need a job, they're not forced to work with people like that.
Right.
So a psychopath would find themselves pretty alone. But the good news about the psychopath is their necessities are provided at no cost to them. And so there's all kinds of healthcare resources available to that person to resolve the psychopathic behavior.
Right. Great. You touched on transitioning from doing it gradually because people aren't mentally prepared for going from using money and scarcity to an abundance economy. So how do you envisage that transition happening, and what sort of time frame are you talking about?
Well, so let's talk about the time frame first, because I know this is something that sticks in a lot of human beings' craw. We at Copiosis do not believe that there is a sense of urgency. We believe that if you rush, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Haste makes waste. There's truth to that. And there's nothing putting pressure on humanity to change other than humanity's desire to move into the goodness that the change is going to bring. And that's good pressure. But if we rush trying to get there, we're going to make a bunch of mistakes. So what we're doing at Copiosis is we're not worried about the time frame. We're enjoying the process of transition. And so the transition is happening right now. Right now, we are in stages, the first 3 stages of our transition, the first 3 stages of a 7-stage transition plan. The first 3 stages being the awareness phase, which is getting the word out, which we've been very successful at that. The edutainment phase, which is creating content that is both educational and entertaining. We're in the process of doing that. And then the political phase, where we create a 501c4 political action committee that helps us start playing in the political arena around the world so that we can have influence on legislation, so that we can prepare the legislative arena for accepting and adopting Copiosis. Meanwhile, we have an industrial strategy and a municipal strategy where we are implementing projects designed to benefit municipal regions, to benefit industrial verticals, so industry. And then, of course, we have our demonstration project vertical, in which we are designing demonstration projects. The third one will be in North Carolina. So we've had 2 before now, and now we're in the process of developing our third one. So the transition is a 7-phased process. The first 3 phases are the ones we're focusing on right now, and it's happening now. So as long as we continue to move forward with the results that we're seeing, and we're seeing lots of positive results from our transition, we know our transition is going to be successful so long as we continue to do what we're doing.
Great. So, I mean, I think you mentioned politicians then, right? So, for example, I know that in the United States, Andrew Yang is big on universal basic income. Have you had any contact with him or any other politicians like him who might be sympathetic to Copiosis?
Well, we have some politicians that are currently actively engaged in our work. So one is a conservative. I think you guys call them not the Labor Party. What do you call the conservatives in your part of the woods? Is it the Labor Party?
The Conservative Party or the Tory Party?
The Tory Party. That's what I thought. Yeah. So we have a conservative on our team who is currently is the legislative director of the Michigan legislature, and he's also a delegate for the state of Michigan, and he is actively engaged in helping us design the political strategy. We have another person who ran for office in his state. I don't remember what state that is right now, but he's actively engaged in communicating about Copiosis as part of our action group. And so we have politicians or politically oriented people who are supporting and actively working on our work, but we don't really reach out to people like Andrew Yang. And here's why. While he is supportive of the RBE, or of universal basic income, I meant to say, he's really focused on what he's focused on. And so his platform includes what he's focused on, and he's trying to push that in order to get mainly universal basic income to become the law of the land here in the United States. So our experience so far is when we're working with someone, when we try to approach someone who's got their own passion and they've got a lot of momentum or velocity behind that passion, they don't tend to have extra time or resources to spend learning about something new or even supporting something beyond what they're spending all their time supporting. So rather than trying to reach out to an Andrew Yang or somebody like that, we prefer cultivating our own politicians who can run for office at the local level. Because here's what we see happening. We see politics becoming more and more decentralized and democratized, which means it's going to become lower and lower to the local community level rather than the federal or the state level. And so our strategy right now is to focus on strategies that pay attention to the local politics rather than national or state level politics.
Right. No, that seems perfectly sensible to me now that you kind of explain it like that. Well, thank you for joining me today, Perry. And so Perry Gruber, the founder of the Copiosis organization. So is there anything else that you'd like to say in ending?
Yeah, only this. So we are becoming increasingly successful in our transition, and we encourage anyone who's interested in finding out more to come to our website at copiosis.com. And also, we post live stream videos and also other videos on our YouTube channel. On YouTube, if you search for Copiosis, you'll find it there. And then finally, if you're interested in interacting with us in real time, you can join us in our social group on Facebook. Just go to Facebook and search for Copiosis social group. It's a tongue twister.
Right. And Copiosis is spelled Copiosis.
Absolutely. Yes, correct.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Perry. Thank you for coming. It was great talking to you.
Great talking with you.
Cheers. Bye.